stealing from young workers. That ain't it. That ain't on. That's not okay. And yet, in Australia, under the law as we currently have it, if you are under the age of 18 and yet don't work more than 30 hours a week, so you work below 30 hours a week, you don't have to be paid super by your corporate employer. That's cooked. That's wrong. That's so wrong. Let's be really clear. 530,000 young workers who are below the age of 18 work less than 30 hours a week, and so they are not entitled to super. In Australia, right now. What will this mean for them? What does it actually look like? It looks like about $411 million that they will not receive in their superannuations because of this law, setting them back significantly in terms of their savings and security for the rest of their life. This makes me so angry. We have had politicians in this debate contributing to this discussion, and when asked about this issue, when young people, young workers, have said, this isn't fair, this isn't on, where's our fair go? The response of certain Liberal MPs has been to say, well, if we pay workers under the age of 18 superannuation, what's next? Super for cats and dogs?
Shame.
What a shameful, disgusting response to what is effectively legalised wage and retirement theft in this country. Now, a lot of folks in this place probably don't take a lot of time to talk to young workers, to listen to young workers about their experience, about what it's actually like to work in the industries dominated by young workers. But we in the Greens have, Senator Pocock has, and their voices and demands are represented in this bill. And let me tell you, it's hard work. You're doing the cleaning up. You're stacking the shelves. You're dealing with the grumpy folks. You're working between your school hours, or you're working between TAFE. Often, for young carers, for example, to be able to put a bit more money in the pot to pay the power bill, to pay the grocery bill, often, to the very parasitic corporation, or should I actually say fresh food people, that you may be working for. The very corporations that proudly proclaim, oh, down, down, prices are down, while your family is driven into the ground because they cut your shifts unexpectedly, or they fire you after the holiday period is done. But you go back every time they put another ad out. You do as much as you can for as long as you can to contribute. You do all of this and they don't pay your super because they aren't legally required to do so in Australia. There are some companies, corporations that have, but the big ones don't. The big ones don't. And that's where the law should come in. That is where the government should act. Because we know that if corporations are left to their own damn devices, they will exploit their workers. I rather thought that a Labour government would understand that. You cannot make fairness and equality from an employer an optional extra. And yet for so long, this government has sat idly by and let that be the case for young Australian workers. Now, we have seen recently at the Labor Party conference the passage of a resolution calling on the government and adopted by the party to fix this problem. This is an urgent problem, and it is urgently needed that words are translated into action. We've heard contributions from MPs on the government side supportive of the idea. Words need to be put into action. The government needs to step up and take on these big corporations because they are ripping young workers off.
Young workers upstairs now too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am very well pointed out, Senator Pocock. We have young workers in the gallery. You know? Folks right up there that may well be taking their first shifts or a couple of days away, a couple of years away from doing that for the first time. They should be paid their superannuation. Same pay for same work. This is discrimination. And it's been allowed to go on for too long. And it is not like these corporations can't afford it. Let me just remind everyone in here the profits of the big three in this space. Coles, in the last financial year, what was their bottom line? 108 billion. I bet they were quite disappointed that it wasn't $1.1 billion flat. I mean, it must be a tough time for the folks at Coles, for the corporate leadership. You know, it's hard operating a monopoly that parasitically extracts wealth from the Australian public because they have an ability at the stroke of a pen to jack up the price of cheese whenever they want to make a quick buck. Woolworths, 1.38 billion profit in the last financial year. You're telling me they couldn't pay their young workers super? This is greed. Maccas, a global profit last year exceeding $13 billion. And these are the corporations allowed by the loopholes in the law to get away with not paying young people their super. Shame.
Yeah.
Shame.
Shame on them.
The Greens have a bill right now to fix this problem. Here's one we prepared earlier. And I say to the government, back the bill. Back the bill. Let's get this done. Let's get young workers the pay, the super they deserve. And if there are some politicians on the fence about this, I would ask you to consider two things. Firstly, that these massively profitable corporations are saying to Australian workers right now, sorry, we're not going to pay your super. And that the government of the day is saying, sorry, you don't qualify for compulsory super. So you've got to just kind of live at the whim of the employer. And ask yourself if that seems fair to you. I'd ask you how you would feel as members of Parliament if there was reform to your superannuation entitlements that meant that you didn't get paid super unless you turned up and could demonstrate that you'd done more than 30 hours a week of actual parliamentary work. I reckon you'd be a bit salty about that. I reckon you'd think that was unfair. And yet that is the situation politics has allowed to exist, government has allowed to continue for young workers in Australia. I would also ask you to consider what it is actually like to work these jobs. Hard work, disproportionately done by women. Hard work in which not only are you often on the front line of copying the frustration of many people with the corporate practice, the abuse at the till, the discriminatory comments. You're then asked to do the hard, lonely work, the stacking of the shelves, the sweeping of the floors. And if the air conditioning's broken or something has exploded somewhere and you've got to clean it up, you're the one asked to do that work. And you do that work and you are in some ways relieved that you can do it because you can pay the bills. Yep. But it doesn't mean it isn't hard. And then, you know, I was talking to an employee of Coles in WA just yesterday, and he shared with me that they and their store understand very clearly that the cameras that are installed in Coles nowadays, overwhelmingly they're not to look for, you know, somebody nicking something or to generally kind of keep an eye on people that might be buying things in the store. All the workers know the primary purpose now is to actually surveil the workers, because there are really clear KPIs in place around how fast you've got to check things through the till, for instance, 10 in a minute. And if you do less than that, if the camera catches you even taking a breath, then you're pulled up. And it builds this sense of anxiety of being watched constantly. That is often the reason why people just cannot continue to take the work at these places anymore, even though they really need the money. Many push through. But I think some in here think that if you're under the age of 18 and working less than 30 hours a week, you must be doing an hour here, an hour there, you know, just a bit of pocket money, you know? And that's not the lived reality of so many young workers. They are doing hard work, wearing the same uniform, often doing either the same tasks or harder tasks than those over the age of 18, because the boss thinks that they can get away with giving the hard stuff to the younger worker. And yet they're not paid the same superannuation. And I will comment and point out, still in Australia, not the same wage. We still have differential wages in this country based on your age. And the Greens want to see them eliminated. There's some work happening now to bring the minimum wage to those working in some industries from the age of 18, but we've got to wipe out age-based discrimination in pay. It's just not acceptable. The government has a role to play here. The politics comes in because it is the Labor government that have decided to allow the loophole in the law to remain. The loophole must be closed. Young workers deserve the same fair pay and the same fair super.
Senator Steele-John.